Welcome to Tech to Table, Growing Cleveland's Future, a 5-part podcast series showcasing the Precision Urban Agriculture Initiative led by the Ohio Aerospace Institute in partnership with Parallax Advanced Research and with financial assistance awarded via SONAN D24D146 from the U.S. Department of Commerce, National Institute of Standards and Technology. This podcast is hosted and produced here at the School of Communication in the Levin College of Public Affairs and Education, and is designed to inform, inspire, and engage Cleveland's urban farmers, technologists, and community leaders. Each episode highlights the role of innovation in local food systems, lifting up both historical context and present-day tech demonstration projects. I'm your host, Anthony Gillespie, the Director of Strategic and Technology-Based Partnerships and Technology Transfer Office at Parallax Advanced Research and the Ohio Aerospace Institute. I have over 34 years of experience leading programs in technology transfer and commercialization across government, academia, and industry. I'm also the Program Director on this Urban Agriculture Initiative. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Sara Continenza, founder and executive director of Food Strong, a Northeast Ohio nonprofit that empowers under-resourced communities through urban agriculture, wellness, and access to fresh local food. She has over 20 years of experience in youth and community development, including service in the Peace Corps and leadership at the Hunger Network. She also serves as the Ward 3 Councilwoman in South Euclid and is recognized as an emerging leader and community champion. Sara, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. And I'm excited to be joined today by Trey Williams, founder of Hood Honey, a community-focused beekeeping initiative in Cleveland, Ohio, that is dedicated to urban agriculture, local sustainability, and empowering neighborhoods through education about pollinators. Thanks for joining us, Trey.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So I'm going to jump in here a little bit and learn a little bit more as far as just some of the work that you're doing here. So, Sara, could you share a little bit more as far as what motivated you to start Food Strong, and how did your early experiences, like your time in the Peace Corps, shape how you approach community wellness and urban farming today?
Thanks for that question. So, you mentioned Peace Corps, and that was a very big part of my trajectory in life, not only because it taught me so much about the importance of community and, really looking out for one another, something that we don't really do so much of in America as nearly as much as other countries. We still have that, but not as much. When it was definitely a great eye-opening experience. And I lived in a smaller rural village where everyone was so connected. It was wonderful, but there was a lot of issues with food access. And I remember starting my first school garden actually there in the village, because I figured let's not only get more food grown in the village, but let's teach our youth how to do that too. And then that could get them more food, as well as maybe potentially raise some funding for the schools who at that time, there'd be maybe 100 students in one classroom and maybe 15 books to share. So we were working on that, and, I traveled all over the world. I've lived everywhere from Europe to Japan to all over Ohio and even Atlanta. I've lived in a lot of places, and I've seen this issue of hunger in all kinds of forms. What I wasn't ready for was after my world travels, and I came back from Japan in 2010, and I started really getting involved with the local nonprofit scene in Cleveland. And, there was a lot of issues with hunger and poverty back then, especially because of the recession in 2008. And so I had been gone during that time, but when I came back, I just saw the aftermath, right? Like downtown Cleveland was a ghost town, and, there was a ton of issues around hunger. And I ended up working at the Hunger Network at that time, and, realized that while we have hunger here, it definitely looks different, but it's still just as, urgent. So, we have people here that I like to say they're overfed and undernourished. There's a ton of calories, a ton of chemicals, but not really nutrition. And then it's no wonder that people in certain communities live an average life expectancy of 3 decades lower than in the neighboring suburbs. And so when I learned about this, and I learned about how many communities lack simple things like a grocery store that we take for granted in our suburban communities, I realized that, that something had to be done, particularly because these conditions were a product of, strategic disinvestment policies by our government and real estate associations. So none of this was accidental. And to me, if we're still struggling all these decades later from those times, it's up to all of us. And we also cannot wait for the same infrastructure that caused these issues in the first place to come save us. It's really all about us doing it for ourselves. And so, another thing that Africa taught me was food sovereignty, growing your own food. It was a subsistence agriculture community that I lived in. And people were very connected to the land and to their food systems. And, if it was raining enough, everything was fine. You had enough crops to eat for the year. But if the rain didn't come, then that's when there could have been some problems. So as we know, watering is always a big issue. And that's why I was excited to work with you and your company to incorporate technology to help solve some of those issues.
Great. So I'm going to start with you, Trey, with one question. Tell us a little bit as far as what was kind of the origins, as far as what started you, and inspired you to start with and launch Hood Honey.
So the inspiration came from one of my good friends, Sam Booz. He saw me coaching baseball for a while. I coached his son, and he said, "Hey, I got this idea. I'm calling it Leaders of Our Future America, and I want you to help me." I'm like, all right. Thought he had a good idea, but thought he needed some help with it. So I started an organization, Hood Honey, to support the nonprofit Leaders of Our Future America. And ever since then, just kind of been taking off, meeting people like Sara, people like you. I'm just kind of, still kind of hard to believe that people is caring this much about what we doing.
Right. I'd like to shout Trey out too, because he's done some classes in some of our schools and super inspirational to our kids. And even how he explained the fact that, in the quote unquote hood, where sometimes our students almost feel a sense of shame over that, he was saying, well, they don't use chemicals in these areas. And that's the best, environment for pollinators and healthy ecosystems, because you aren't, doing all that other stuff. And I saw him get our kids thinking differently about their neighborhood and what hood means and some of the positive things about it. And the next thing you know, when we were doing our entrepreneurship program, some of our kids actually named their companies in a similar way. So his idea was Goods from the Hood. And it was like a healthy soul food company. And he was directly inspired by Trey and what he had learned from Trey. And I just wanted to shout that out because I thought that was super inspirational.
Right.
Thanks,
Right. Yeah. And that's a good, analogy here as far as a good segue over to some of our questions. One of the things, really looking at urban ag, folks start thinking about as far as, kind of basic, getting back to nature. Really, how do you work with nature? But also there's opportunities that are created out of really the whole agricultural industry here. And so, with that, one big piece is also, as far as today's society, how do we integrate technology and innovation into that area? And so, Trey, I'm just curious here, and not all the solutions is all about technology. Parallax, as far as how we're contributing, we're trying to bridge that gap between urban farmers and other organizations that are involved in this industry to really meet the needs and provide food to those who need it. And we're just that convener. But I guess I'm curious along the lines here of how could technology, how could innovation possibly play a role here? And it's not always a direct relationship here. In certain cases, it's just additive. It may be slight improvements here. So are you using any technology as far as your day-to-day work? Or you may have aspirations as far as that. Could you share a little bit as far as some of your thoughts, maybe a key area that you're looking at right now?
Yeah. So I'm working with you guys. I'm working with Parallax.
Well, yeah, tell the folks more about how we're helping.
Yeah. So for one, being a beekeeper, I do think being a beekeeper is kind of easy, especially if you call for it. But once you get past 2, 3, or 4 hives, then it gets kind of hard, you know. So with parallax, I cannot remember. I always forget. And I was researching this last night too. But there is this piece of tech that observes bees and weighs the beehive, you know, and lets you know how many bees are coming in and if they're bringing in pollen. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, like how much time am I about to save with this, you know? But a better way to look at it is like, what am I about to do with that time that I'm not using beekeeping, you know? And that's probably going to be teaching, making more products, just getting more people involved.
Coming to more Food Strong classes.
You know? And I still need to come visit down on 65th, 66th in Superior.
67th in Superior,
67th.
Yep.
Yeah, my cousin has a apartment building right behind there. So I've been telling her about you.
Yeah, let's make a connection.
We are, because I got to cut her grass. So
perfect.
Hey, cousin. But yeah, but that's the thing, though. That's the thing with tech is that it can be used to actually bring people together instead of pulling people apart. You know, because the most thing that we see with tech now is it kind of separating people from each other, from nature. But this is a way to bring people back because me as a farmer, it's going to allow me to connect with younger students even better now that we think about it, that if I can show them this piece of tech with the bees, especially on camera, it's going to really get them going, you know?
Right. So let me sum it up real quick here, and I'm going to transition over to Sara here to learn a little bit more as far as some of the things here. But really, you know, technology as far as the innovations here will be a time saver for you and enable you to be more effective as far as connecting with partners in the community. So that's one way. It doesn't always have to be technology, you know, being a direct impact on things, but it's an enabler for you and create some efficiencies here. And that's going to lead for you to be more effective and really reach out within the community. So that's one of your big thrusts here is inspiring other young people to be involved as well.
Yes.
Great. So Sara, coming back here as far as, you know, technology as far as with Food Strong may not necessarily be a big part of what you're doing here, but I'm sure it plays a role here. So share a little bit more as far as, you know, technology. And then in your case, it may be as far as building out the infrastructure because you're trying to create an organization that creates impact within respective communities that you work in as well.
Sure. So, I mean, currently as we use tech will be things like, you know, our iPads that we bring to our classes, and we use those. We teach kids how to do plant identification or scan barcodes or design garden beds, you know, during the square foot method. You know, there's different ways you can use it in that sense. And we also, of course, use technology in the cloud to organize all of our files, our donors, all that. So obviously that kind of IT stuff is integral in any organization. But outside of that, you know, it resonated when you talked about time saving, Trey. Oh my gosh, just the amount of time that you're spending in watering, right? Because you can't just throw a hose out. Like you're watering every plant for 20 seconds. You know, it takes so much time. And then you have, you know, we have things like soaker hoses connected to a timed, you know, system that definitely helps. But what could we do as we continue to expand to make it even more integrated into our day-to-day? So, you know, one thing you had mentioned as a possibility, and I'm really excited about, is pest control. That's, watering and pests are the two things that will really mess up your crops and take so much of your time trying to figure it out. And we are organic. We don't do any chemicals or pesticides or anything. So anything that could help us do our job more efficiently without putting harmful chemicals into the earth is a plus for me. And then, you know, as we get into the church more, which is phase 3 of our restoration project, we have the phase 1, which is the house restoration, so we can move in our headquarters and bring in some other like-minded organizations for offices. Phase 2 is really the farm build out because we have the north lot. There's like over an acre on that north lot we'd like to farm out and do all kinds of innovative types of growing methods that include both traditional, like Native American type approaches, because they really knew what was up, but then, modernizing it with technology as well, But when we get into the church, which is phase 3 of this project, we'd love to just line the walls with hydroponics.
Nice.
Because at the end of the day, Cleveland needs year-round growing capacity. And I envision this project to be like serving as a model so that other groups, I mean, there's how many big old dilapidated churches around Cleveland, Trey?
Yeah, probably about 50.
You know what I mean? At least. And they're just sitting there, and so many of the times, they're not being used. Imagine just using those for indoor cultivation. On top of that, a lot of them that have gone defunct or are about to are because they can't afford utilities. So by incorporating renewable energy, which is solar, which is other types of renewable energy, geothermal, whatever we can do, and utilizing a technological framework to bring that all together and become more efficient, not only does that help Food Strong, or could help Trey, that could help, all these, churches, historic churches, or other, building owners that are just getting more and more stretched financially because of the increasing costs of energy and all that other stuff. So those are some of the things I'm really excited about technology.
Right. Yeah, and those are excellent areas here. Just kind of following up here, Trey. One you mentioned earlier as far as just kind of pollination process and seeing, the bees as far as being able to just have some sensing capabilities, for example.
Yeah.
That would be helpful along the lines. I'm assuming too, and I think we talked about this a little bit as far as beekeeping, how you would be interested in possibly as far as there's certain invasive species as far as with respect to bees, and it'd be nice to know if there's a threat or not along those lines. And so I'm assuming that's a challenge for you with respect to technology.
Yeah. So keeping up with the Varroa destructor, the Varroa mite, is a big thing for us because that's our biggest challenge. Like you said, not mites, but pests are like one of our biggest challenges. So.
And groundhogs.
Oh, man. Make me start on those. But just being able to keep track of the varroa mites or being able to focus more energy on it. Because when you're beekeeping, you're worried about so many things. You're worried about, obviously, the weather, and that's how that's affecting the nectar flow. You're worried about things like wasp. You're worried about other bees attacking your bees. You're worried about disease. Okay, but most of all, you're worried about the varroa mite. So being able to use tech to weigh the beehive lets me, the beekeeper, know, oh, okay, they're bringing a lot of honey here. Okay. Before, I have to go spend an hour checking to make sure that is, But now I can just spend more time really focusing on what's causing harm to my bees, which would be the varroa mite and obviously loss of habitat, pesticides, things like that.
Right.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way you could utilize tech for season extension?
For bees?
Yeah, I'm just because I know that you have honey cultivation in the winter in Cleveland, but I'm wondering, is there a way that you could extend the time you have the bees?
Yeah. You remember that Simpsons episode where they had the dome?
Yes.
We have to do something like that. Because bees travel, one beehive can reach flowers up to 5 miles. And it takes one bee has to visit like 12,000 flowers or 12,000 visits, or not one bee, but bees have to make like 12,000 visits or something for a tablespoon of honey. So it takes millions and almost billions of flowers to get, honey on your toast, so something like that just wouldn't be. It's feasible, but it just wouldn't be effective, cost efficient, just to get honey.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
And I know, kind of switching it over to Sara, she mentioned about the groundhog issue.
Oh, yeah.
Is a major.
She's in Groundhog Central.
So that's a big issue as far as groundhogs and just trying to keep them from getting to, as far as to your crops.
Not only our crops, but like destroying the infrastructure of your property. I mean, they'll go into your pipes. They've gotten into our basement before and shoot up all of the duct work. I mean, it's intense. So yeah, they are getting worse. They're spreading out everywhere. And I don't believe they have many natural predators around here. I mean, there are some coyote in the burbs and more rural area, but they don't make it into the city very often. And so without that lack of, natural predator, we do other things in communities, to manage populations. And I'm just wondering if there's something we could do with tech. Like, we track them all and then figure out how to get them all to the some parks or something. I don't know.
I think we should do it's a little high tech, low tech. I think I want to get into some dogs. Dogs to just have
groundhog dogs.
Well, just to be on the farm that'll prevent, but also someone who can be the dog person with the dog and tech. Because I think the city of Cleveland just released something about groundhogs being some kind of, them trying to control the groundhogs because they're becoming a problem, not just for us farmers, but everyone. Homeowners.
Yeah. And unlike certain areas where you have the natural predators, it didn't hit me till you all brought it up as far as the challenge there. How do you really kind of rid of them? Kind of in other areas, then there's natural predators that help with the population.
I'm looking into getting a guard pig for the property, so maybe we can have them trained against groundhogs.
Maybe so. A guard pig.
Yeah.
I like that.
I heard they get pretty vicious.
Watch your back.
Right.
Yeah, but there could be some opportunities here. Kind of going to switch gears from technology a little bit as far as probably hits home for both of you all here. Just as far as kind of community impact. I mean, Trey, tell me a little bit about some of the biggest changes you've seen in your neighborhood since starting Hood Honey with respect to just impact and engagement.
Yeah.
And community impact, I'm saying here.
I think the biggest impact is seeing all the kids and the adults start to get into what we're doing. It's so many times people ask me about you, saying, oh, have you heard of Food Strong? Or, and people always tell me all the time, like, oh yeah, people are talking about you. So like,
I hear about it too.
Yeah. So just seeing people get excited about it. Goods from the hood,
I think it's a great idea. I want to help make it happen.
I want them to make it happen too. But I think that's the most inspirational things, to see that the work that we do from our heart inspires other people to want to make a business or just want to do more, because the future really is at stake here, and I did want to speak on this because when we think about this time now, we're kind of going into like the AI era, and everybody's thinking about, John Connor and Sara O'Connor, from the movie and The Matrix and stuff. Right. But I think the part that gets overlooked is the technology that they were using to help advance mankind. Not saying that
that turned against him.
Yeah, and it's the little things in movies, because I like to watch movies and see little things in them. But I think that's the part that kind of gets me here, is like the tech that's going to help us advance. This stuff doesn't have to be scary. People used to be scared of planes and radios, and now we're just, it's not really a big thing. So I think we need to just kind of calm down and actually take advantage of the advancement of technology, because this is going to save us time. And like I said before, allow us to do more personal things in our communities, because that's what our communities need.
Right. And one of the things, I'll point this out before I switch it over to Sara, a lot of folks, ag is really one of the biggest industries in our state. And in a lot of states throughout the nation, it's key to the economy. We have become more of a technological society here in the U.S. And so a lot of the gadgets that we have taken over, and folks still feel like, hey, those are the biggest opportunities. One of the things that you all are doing is bringing it back and showing this is still a major industry as far as ag. You're doing it as far as in urban areas. And then the other piece is, I think, the relationship that you all are working within the community that probably a lot of young people don't see, and maybe even others there, is that there's business opportunities. There's opportunities for entrepreneurship, for you to kick things off and really take care of yourselves. You're producing food for yourself. At the same time, that could be, if you have more, can go to the community, and then you can help others. So those are all key aspects there. And I think, you hit upon that, Trey, when you brought it up as far as some of your work. I'm not sure, Sara, if you want to piggyback off of what Trey said, or we can switch it over here. I had one question here, but I'll allow you to react here.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit to the community impact. So, we're in 14 schools. We reach almost 400 kids on a weekly basis now throughout the school year, mostly Cleveland Public. And, we've seen a ton of our kids, and I'm not sure exact data from this past school year because we're still finalizing all that. But I do know that there's significant increase in social emotional health and team building and interest in and knowledge about the concepts we teach. I think, and we also have seen that the days that Food Strong is in the class, there's almost no absences, even the serial absent. We've had several of our kids and clients start their own businesses, like Jeffrey, who started his bakery called Far From the ER. It's free of the 9 allergens because he spent his life in the ER before he realized about his allergies, and so now he helps others. And then it's also entering into the homes of these kids. These kids are taking this information to their homes, and parents are actually calling principals and saying, hey, what's going on at school? Because my kid just taught me about some app that you're scanning barcodes now, and they're teaching me what to look for in the foods, and now we're looking at all the ingredient labels. Like, what's happening? So those are some of the things in the school level. And then, we had the Learning Garden at Coit Road Farmers Market. We've always, attracted a lot of support and, donations and volunteers. When we got this Superior Farm, just because I think a lot of it with the publicity and just the location next to downtown and the great, area it's in that's up and coming, we've had people coming in from all directions, including Parallax, thank you very much, who heard about us and wants to be supportive. So what went from like a spot where we want to do our headquarters and have a community farm has turned into a movement. We have hosted almost 1,500 volunteers since September. We have another 70 coming next week for just one of the days. Today we had a bunch of students for our clients of the HELP program who works with people with developmental challenges, and they come every week. So we have a ton of different support coming from different angles, a lot of in-kind support and things of that nature. And I think that it's because people are really excited about this and see the value. So I think a lot of that is part of the impact that we're making, and we're seeing it at the both macro and micro levels. So
yeah. So, question here as far as for you, I know you're doing a lot of things here. Kind of going to follow up here, just as far as kind of where things are headed for you all as far as moving forward. Any, biggest challenges as far as looking at right now? I mean, we touched upon kind of trying to deal with breeding efficiencies, through beekeeping here. But I guess looking forward, kind of what do you see as far as some of your biggest challenges in bringing technology on? We realize that, it can be a key, but are there some challenges here for you?
Oh, yeah, big challenges. The biggest challenge is resources and the knowledge of this tech. So with Parallax coming in, I knew of some tech, but I had no idea of how to get it or how to get the resources for it. Because I've been working a 9-to-5 my whole life. So being an entrepreneur is something I just started in 2021. I mean, I've done other stuff before, but full time, it's hard, because you're trying to feed yourself and keep this business alive. So trying to figure out how to get the resources in to these urban farms are, pretty tough, let alone, I just figured out how to get resources for a hoop house, and I was like, oh man, great. And I was like, okay. Is another step, it's always another step, but
we have a ton of materials if you want to come shopping.
What materials?
At our farm.
I got to get rid of my materials first. But I think that's the biggest thing is bringing in those resources.
Specifically technological resources?
Yeah, specifically technological resources, because like Sara, we have a goal, and we're inspired by Singapore. We're inspired by a lot of people. But one of the things we like about Singapore is how similar it is to the hood. Singapore is a city-state. So it's a city and a country. It's all encompassed in one, obviously. But they have to deal with things like, how are we going to support ourselves? How are we going to have food security? And we're importing all of our food. That's not food secure. So they came up with this plan called the 30 by 30 plan. And by 2030, Singapore wants to grow 30% of its food. And Singapore is just a city, so it's an urban place, and they're kind of trying to do what we're doing here, and we have a goal to feed our community, 10, 20, 30% of the food, And by our community, we're talking about Mount Pleasant, our small community. But figuring out things in these small areas with tech and how to feed people and then be able to grow it, give our ideas to Food Strongs, trade ideas with Food Strongs, and then grow it from trading with our fellow farmers to fellow cities to other countries, because this is really a worldwide problem that we're trying to solve here. So, for me, I'm always thinking big, and my mindset has always been, especially once I decided I wanted to grow food and kind of attack this problem, my mindset has been, how are we going to feed Mount Pleasant? Because if I can figure out how to feed Mount Pleasant, then we can figure out how to feed the world,
Yeah. And that's one of the roles. I mean, I'll kind of really share a little bit as far as the role of our organization. I mean, we're an organization that does a lot of R&D work with partners in government, industry, and academia. And so we consider ourselves kind of that technology translator on one. Here's the innovations that are out there. Some of our folks actually create innovations, but we also see a lot from various stakeholders. So bringing that to the table, which is one of the tasks we're doing for this project, is just sharing with the community what's available, what's the potential there. That's one key. And then the other piece is really then, okay, once we say it's there, there's always a challenge. We realize that you may not necessarily, your organization or Sara's organization may not necessarily be the technical expert. So how do you apply it and where it can be used? Or we'll bring folks to the table. So that's the way we can play a role. And I think that last piece too is working with the community, working with you all to help spread the word. What are the best practices there? What are ways effectively, other than word of mouth, or maybe kind of, through folks who know someone, are there digital means we can do that? Or are there other folks who have the reach they can spread the word as well? And so those are ways we can help. We're looking to help as well. But I think you hit those key points, Trey, as far as needs. Sara, anything else along those lines here as far as really, challenges to bringing technology to the table, maybe from your perspective and for your organization as far as moving forward to build that trust within the community and then kind of grow some of your efforts with respect to urban ag?
Major issue for getting the work done at the scale we need to do, given the fact that we have more nonprofits of any city in the entire world, yet we're one of the poorest still. How does that work? A lot of it is division and fragmentation amongst one another, unfortunately. And I think a lot of that has to do with how things have been traditionally funded, where they kind of pit people against each other. And then it gets this competitive landscape going on where really we should be working together throughout this. It needs to be a movement, and it's only going to be in a movement if we're going to work together. Otherwise, we're all just little pockets of people struggling for resources, getting a little grant here, a little grant there, trying to make it work. We have to work together. I really want to see that competitive landscape be transformed because it's old. It's old at this point. One thing I have always thought about is the opportunity for some sort of app that engages not only our community, but one another. So we could share information about programs we've got going on. I could put in an alert that I have, hey, I got this extra trailer that I don't need. Who wants it? Or, I'm doing this project or an event or whatever. And then the community can enroll and sign up for these different programs and events that we're doing. So it's like kind of a way to communicate with one another, communicate with the community, and the community can engage with us. So it kind of creates more of a streamlined approach. And then you can't say, I didn't know that was already happening. If you're going to go to this street over here, it's a way you can say, oh, well, I checked and there is already something similar going on. So I'm going to align with them first or go somewhere else, because a lot of times we see this duplication of services and stuff because of lack of communication. So if we can incorporate a better, some sort of platform that will really bring us together, help us truly work together and collaborate, and then also have better communication with our communities, I think that would be a really great opportunity because I still see it. I think things have gotten improved, but I definitely still see this competitiveness, and it's only hurting our ability to really do the work that we're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll have to talk offline here. There's some things that we've seen here, may not necessarily have reached here in the region, but I've seen some efforts along those lines. And so that might be some usefulness here. Kind of wrapping up here, I'll start with you, Trey. You know, tell the audience a little bit as far as what really keeps you motivated when the work gets tough here. What keeps you going as far as some of the urban ag activities that you have going on?
Oh, that's an easy question. It's my family. It's always my family. My family keeps me very motivated. They're always there for me, get on my nerves. But all in all, my family always has had my back. When I said, hey, I'm going to run this baseball league. And they're like, okay, well, we kind of want you to start working, but all right. And they signed my cousins up and supported me. And when I said, hey, I'm about to put some bees in the hood, they were like, don't you think that's dangerous? But all right, so my family has always supported me, from my own son to my grandma, uncles, cousins. That's what keeps me motivated to keep going and keep, reaching for new opportunities.
Right. One quick follow-up here before I move over to Sara here. I guess speaking of new opportunities, hood honey, you're doing the beekeeping. You mentioned as far as I was out, I visited. You mentioned as far as the greenhouse. So what's next? What's kind of in the plans here, in the short-term plans? Share with the audience as far as kind of your vision here, kind of as a closing question.
Yeah. So my vision short-term is to keep, teaching and educating people on pollinators and bees, and showing people how to, how we're going to feed ourselves in the future. Because I believe that's what we're going to do. Here's a secret I haven't really told anybody, but I'm not giving anybody a choice. We're going to feed ourselves and we're going to figure it out. That's how I feel. Long term, what I want to do is kind of similar to Sara. Is I recognize the problem that we have in Cleveland. We got to feed ourselves long term. So what I want to do is create a sort of ecosystem where I can grow black soldier flies, okay? Which, if you don't know what those are, just basically think of it as a fly. And I want to grow those babies, those little worms, and feed them to fish, like hydroponics, like our friends at Riddall do. But I also want to grow, take the fish poop and use that to fertilize hay for fodder and grow that for rabbits so that we can have rabbit food and fish, not rabbit food, but food have rabbits as food. Yeah.
What about groundhogs?
Food that is, oh man, I wish they tasted a little better. But, that's just basically a rough drive. You can see things like that on the internet. That's everywhere. But long term, I really want to get into more livestock, integrating bees, of course, and the honey and everything they do. But I want to use the bees to kind of bring resources in so that we can actually do innovative things, and feed people. And I want to grow all this stuff right in Mount Pleasant, so next 5-10 years, I want to do something crazy. So come help me, Sara.
Oh, I'm in.
Well, it's not crazy.
You need not say more. Let's go.
No, it is crazy because,
yeah,
look, we have to be crazy because if we're, the crazy people are the ones we remember, what's that guy named Teddy Roosevelt? Didn't he do a bunch of crazy stuff with the Rough Riders? But we remember him. We don't remember that other president, Tyler whatever. We don't remember him. He didn't do anything crazy.
Right. And you're looking at a good way as far as taking advantage of the resources and how can you take one farming method and leverage it to move into other areas.
Exactly.
And so that's some of the innovation that's there. It's not necessarily technological innovation, but it's the spirit of innovation. And you're representing that well as far as some of the work you're doing and looking at the vision that's there.
Thank you.
So, Sara, I'm going to ask the same question for you. What keeps you motivated when things are rough? And then kind of what's the vision? What's next for Food Strong? You've kind of set the table as far as activities that you're working on, but where are things headed? We'll close with that question.
Sure. What motivates me every day is God. I wake up every morning and I ask for what I call guidance. And I have been brought out of a lot of dark times because of my relationship with my higher power. So I shout out to God. Number one, thank you very much for all the blessings. My family and just the students and the folks we get to work with every day, and my staff and everyone the volunteers, my board, everyone that has come around this mission, this movement, the coolest people ever. I forget that that's not necessarily like most people, but I'm just always surrounded by the best of the best because of their hearts, their passion, their desire to be part of this work. So I'm really spoiled in that sense. And those people drive me and pull me out of some dark times when I need it, because we all have rough times or want to give up sometimes. But, those awesome people will never let me do that. In terms of what's next, I would say, this farm, this is taking a lot of our time, but once, this is really up and running, it's a 3-phase plan, and I want it to become a self-sustaining farm. And the real reason I decided to take this huge, ridiculously hard endeavor on is because I know that not only could this help make us financially sustainable, by having space to rent out, you can throw events, you can host weddings, whatever we need to do. But then also, we have a lot of amazing community partners that might not be big enough to need their own huge space or office or whatever, but we can share. You come here, we build each other up, and we can work together out of this space to really create, to build this movement up. So that's one thing. In the shorter term, we're also looking to package and sell our curriculum and overall approach in the schools to other districts. I've been asked by places all over the country and actually a couple international communities that were interested in the program. So I can't be in every district, but I can definitely sell you how we do it and our curriculum. And so that's another big thing, too, to scale and duplicate our services in other communities. So that's some of the bigger picture stuff, But at the end of the day, Trey, it's all about, like you said, it's all about feeding our communities and us feeding each other. It's food sovereignty. It's not food security. We're not giving a man a fish. Yeah. We are teaching that man how to fish. And that way, that person, those we reach, they don't need to rely on broken institutions, that, have not always been for our benefit, right? We look at redlining, we look at some of the things that went on. I'm not saying that the government is, up for us now necessarily, but look what's going on at the federal level. Look what went on at the state level in Ohio. We could keep waiting for them to hopefully change, or maybe our votes will one day help things, or maybe if we march enough. But at the end of the day, we need to eat, and we can either wait or we can be the change, and it's up to us, and we have to feed ourselves. And so working with like-minded groups and really restructuring not only how we grow our food, but our overall relationship with the land. Stop killing the things you call weeds. They're not. They're medicine. They're food. Stop thinking about things the way we have been for decades, and it's really just harmed everything. And let's reconnect with one another in the land. And I think that there's going to be a big shift. And I think we're moving toward it. I was singing into the rafters in an empty auditorium for years about this. But recently, I think COVID played a role. People are really responsive. Now they're coming to me, when do you have your next class? How can I learn? I want to do this. I want to be part of it. I want to start a garden. And so I'm seeing more and more of that. And I know that they're being inspired by people like Trey or, Food Strong and stuff. And so I think we're starting to see the importance. And I think this is going to really help drive the movement.
Yeah. Great. That's all good information here, and I'm sure the audience found this conversation very insightful here. And I want to thank you, Trey and Sara, for for the conversation here.
And thank you for the resources you are contributing to our organizations and the knowledge. It's going to help us tremendously.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah, that's what we do, is really play that role.
And shout out to Congresswoman Chantel Brown for helping get some of the resources for this.
Yes, agreed. And thanks to our listeners as well for joining us on Tech to Table, Growing Cleveland's Future. Stay tuned for our fifth and final episode, Beyond the Garden Bed, What's Next for Cleveland's Food Tech Future. where we'll hear from the Urban Farming Initiative and UA Vistas about how Cleveland can scale up local food production, advance technology adoption, and build a more resilient, equitable food system for everyone. You won't want to miss it.